10, 11, and 12. Now they want you to get used to picking out which one of those tables do I use when I'm doing a word problem. Last time, way back 2 weeks ago, or whatever it was, the 27th, we did the Z, which was our standard distribution. If you know the standard deviation in a word problem, then you use the Z table. The T1, we started off with the T1 today. If you're going to use the T1, the standard deviation is unknown and it has a small sample size. You can use either the Z or the T1 if your sample size is large and it's not normally distributed. Yes, I can talk. It doesn't have that normal bell curve like we're used to doing. So if it's not normally distributed, then I can use either the Z or the T. And then the last one where it says it's unclear, it's going to be unclear if it tells you that you know very little about the distribution. And the sample size probably is relatively small. So if I'm looking at my table here, the first one has a sample size of 10, which is kind of small, but notice it says we know very little about our distribution. If it says that in there, that means it's unclear and we really don't know should we use the Z or the T. The next one, sample size is 14. It is normally distributed, but we do not know what the standard deviation is. If it's an unknown standard deviation, then that's when we use the T distribution. The next one has a sample size of 17. It is normally distributed, and we do know the standard deviation. Anytime we do know the standard deviation, we are going to use the Z table, the Z score. The next one says it has a sample size of 75. It's from a non-normally distributed population, and so if it's from the non-normally one, that's the one where we could either use the Z or the T. And then the last one, sample size is 90. It's from a non-normally distributed population, but we do know the standard deviation. Anytime we know the standard deviation, we're going to use the Z. So our table looks something like that. Okay? So if you do know the standard deviation and it says that right in the problem, going to use the Z. We'll get to word problems next week, and so that's why they want you to be able to pick out which table you're going to use. All right, so here again, on number 1, says our sample size is 17. It's from a normally distributed population with a known standard deviation. If it says that, which one are we going to use?
Z.
The Z. Number 2, we have a sample size of 18. It's from a population distribution which we know very little. If it says that, we're going to pick unclear. We don't know enough to figure out which one we should use. It's unclear. The next one, our sample size is 90. It's from a non-normally distributed population, but we don't know if we have the standard deviation or not, so we are going to say that we could use Z or T, since it doesn't say anything about our standard deviation. Next one, sample size is 14, normally distributed population. The standard deviation is unknown. We would use the T, since our standard deviation is not known. And the last one, our sample size is 100. We have a non-normally distributed population, but we do know the standard deviation. So we use the Z, exactly. All right, number 12, same thing here. We have a sample size of 100. It is from a non-normally distributed population with a known standard deviation of 77. We would use
Z.
the Z. Number 2, the sample has a size of 20. It's from a normally distributed population with an unknown standard deviation. T. Next one, we have a sample size of 80. It's from a non-normally distributed population, and that's all we know. Z or T. Next one, our sample size is 18. It's from a population which we know very little. Unclear. And the last one, our sample size is 13. It's from a normally distributed population with a known standard deviation of 77.
Z.
Z. You know the standard deviation. All right.